The following production is part of the Play Some Video Games podcast network.
Greetings, boarders, and welcome to Board with Video Games, the gaming podcast that strives for the right balance of coverage for games you play on your table and on your television. You could think of us as the avocado and chocolate of gaming podcasts. We're a proud member of the PSVG Podcast Network and now thrilled to be part of the Dice Tower Network as well. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle, and joining me on this co-op adventure, the guy who never substitutes his dairy with a berry, Josh. How are you doing this evening?
I don't understand anything that you just said to me. Okay. Avocado and chocolate is a thing that people do?
Oh, yeah. Avocado and chocolate are totally a thing now, especially it became very popular because using an avocado is a great substitution for vegans for dairy items because of the creaminess and the fat of it. So in a lot of chocolate desserts, they will substitute the dairy with avocado.
That's you watch a lot more cooking shows than me. I'm guessing that's why you know that, or do you practice that?
I have done it before. There was that 1 month, like a year ago, that I ate vegan for a month. So I have done it, but also I just do, I'll watch a lot of cooking shows and stuff. But it's actually like kind of the current trendy thing. And did you know that avocados are berries?
Now I figured since the rest of that statement. Yeah, I guess it's also accurate. I would never substitute my dairy with an avocado ever.
It really isn't bad.
I'm not a fan of the texture.
What's that?
I'm not a fan of the texture.
Well, right, but it's just like it's just like subbing out, like using like applesauce in like brownies or a cake or something like that. It just replaces the role of like the liquid or the fat or whatever else. So it doesn't necessarily have the texture of avocado because you're mashing it up and mixing it into a batter. It just replaces like the fat.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, just something, if you ever want to try, if you ever want to, venture down that path, something you might want to check out. So Josh, I'm gonna divert us a little bit this week. I have two things I want to talk about before we get into the show, if that's cool with you.
Of course.
So number one, interesting thing that I learned. We have a listener now who knows my wife.
Uh-oh.
I know. So he was messaging her and was like, hey, so you don't like this thing, or I heard that you don't like that thing, or like you really don't like this style of game.
Oh, no.
And then my wife was like, man, do I need to start listening to this podcast? And I was like, no, it's fine. Not a big deal. Everything I say is great. So Nick, I'm calling you out. Got to keep them things to yourself, sir.
Yeah, don't rat out Kyle, Nick.
Now, granted, I don't say anything I wouldn't say to her face. Like everything I say is actually typically conversations we've had. But just Nick, come on, man, help me out here. So that's one thing I want to bring up is that. The second thing I wanted to bring up is Josh. Do you know what feeling I experienced for the first time in a very long time recently?
Oh, there's so many feelings I could guess.
I know there are so many. What do you think it could be?
What's a fun one to guess?
I'll let you in on a secret. It wasn't fun.
Was it jealousy?
No.
Hate?
It was betrayal.
Oh, you said recently. So I didn't
it's like a few hours ago. So for those of you who are regular listeners, we typically record on a Tuesday. We're recording on a Monday this week because Josh was like, hey, can we record on Monday? And I was like, yeah, that's totally fine. Then I come to find out the reason he wants to record on a Monday is because he wants to be on a different podcast on Tuesday. And I felt betrayed.
Well, don't feel betrayed. So I'll be on Fluxtapose live tomorrow. They typically record the same time we do. And one of their hosts is on a vacation break hiatus, whatever you will. And I reached out to the other host and said, if you ever need any help coming up soon, let me know. I'd be happy to help out. And he just happened to asked me if I could be on this week. And I was like, well, let me ask Kyle if we can record on Monday. And then I did. And then you said yes. And then I was like, I'm in. And then I guess I didn't intentionally not tell you why. I just didn't tell you why.
And to be clear, we had a nice little Twitter go around about it.
Oh,
And
yeah,
obviously, and obviously, we love the guys over at Flux to Pose. They're amazing.
Yes.
But I very much cannot wait until baby Borboni grows up and half truths start to get being told, and you conflate those to lies. But when you do it, it's totally okay.
Do as I say, not as I do.
So obviously, that episode of Flux to Pose will be live. It will already have happened by the time you're listening to this. But if you are not listening to Flux to Pose, we highly encourage you to listen to them. They are absolutely wonderful. And genuinely, I find to be very funny a lot of the time. Sometimes intentionally, more often than not intentionally.
Usually not intentionally.
Yeah. So with that, we will move on to the housekeeping. So thanks so much for joining us this week. As always, if you have any feedback, questions, suggested topics, hit us up at Board with VG on Twitter, or check out all the awesome things that Josh posts over on the Instagram, also Board with VG. As mentioned earlier, we are a proud part of the PSVG, and PSVG is on Patreon. We are thrilled with the support you have given us there thus far. So if you would like to monetarily support what we do, you can find us there at patreon.com/PSVG. But the most important thing to us is just that you listen and maybe share what we do with someone you think might enjoy it. Speaking of Patreon, I want to give a quick shout out to all of our producers over there. Coach Hulk, Edwin Kahlo, Devin Tyus, Kevin Austin, Chris M, Bonesaw, Barry Cathcart, and Paul Calico. Thank you so much for helping to support us and making all the things we do possible. And yes, we are now a member of the Dice Tower Podcast Network. So if you enjoy our conversations about board games and would like to dive deeper into that world, we encourage you to check out the Dice Tower Podcast as well as the other members of the network. No matter what type of board games you enjoy, there's a podcast on the network that is going to be right for you. So enough of this housekeeping and other random things. Josh, what have you been playing on your tabletop, sir?
Well, what have I been playing? So I've been playing 2 games you've already heard me talk plenty about. Been playing Keyforge still, maintaining a healthy, we'll say, play time. We've been playing a lot. I'm still enjoying the game very much. I have 4 unopened decks that are being waiting to be played. And then they just announced the next series of Keyforge, which is also exciting because it's incorporating cards from this current set, Rise of the Archons, and adding 200 new cards. So there'll be 370 cards in the next series. And then from what I've understood, the third series will also take some cards from the first and then some from the second and then implement them into the third.
So here is my question for you about this.
Yes.
And I know this isn't the news week, but I find this interesting. And I saw you post that this existed, but I haven't read much or done much research on it. So not every card in the current set is going to be in this new one, correct?
Correct.
So they're taking a select sum, adding brand new ones. Is it intended that you can play the decks from this new set against the decks from the original set?
You certainly can, yeah. Your decks are safe, and I think a lot of people worried that this might be
the rotation, if you will,
cash sink that everyone was worried about, like with the Magic lifestyle of gaming. But no, you will be able to play your current decks against the new decks. The cards that are added from this first set will be considered I forget the name of the card. It's like Legends, I think they are called in the new set. So there'll be special cards too. So they'll be easily identified, but they will have different numbers than the ones that are in this series now. So my number 36 won't be 36 in the new set.
So here's my last and final question, which you may or may not know the answer to. So some cards from set 1 and some cards from set 2 will be in set 3.
Yes.
Will a card from set 1 have to be in set 2 for it to be eligible to be in set 3? Or could a card be just in 1 and 3?
I don't know that. But I would imagine they can just pull from anyone
Right.
And I'm not sure if they're using like their algorithm to do that or if they're handpicking them. So maybe they're doing that, but I would imagine that it doesn't matter. But I don't. They haven't either. They haven't announced that yet, or I didn't see that yet.
I like to imagine Richard Garfield sitting at a table with a fire roaring and a cup of coffee or tea close to him, and him like hand selecting every card that's going to move on.
Well, it's not too bad now because there's only 300 something cards, but
just choosing his favorite children.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the funny thing about Keyforge is the cards that are common are equally as powerful as the rares, and sometimes more so.
So what makes the rares rare then?
I'm imagining just the amount that are in the game itself. So like I have a deck that has 4 of the same character in that one deck. I imagine the rares will only have 1 in a deck.
But it would seem like then the rares should be more powerful because of that, right? Like if it has to be if it's restricted, then it should in some way, I don't want to say break the game, but allow you to maybe break. Well, because I mean, and that's what they typically do in Magic, right? Like mythics typically allow you to play the game in the way the game was maybe not intended to be played.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I haven't seen it necessarily, but I don't think that the rarity of the cards don't necessarily dictate how many you can have. So there could be a deck where you have 2 rare cards or 2 unique cards in the deck. I don't know that I've seen that, but typically when you get a deck, you'll have at least a couple rares in there from different houses. Sometimes from the same house. And the Horseman, I guess, would be the example of like cards that are whatever is above rare. I'm trying to think of the rarity scale for Keyforge. I know it's like common, uncommon, rare, and then something else. But it's all about how your deck is playing more so than the power of the card. Like the rares typically have great abilities and powers, but like some regular common cards are like, your opponent destroys all their ember and they can't, or your opponent can't forge a key or kill the top 3 most powerful creatures on the board. Those are like common cards. Like those can be used to be very powerful. So I don't know. It's just one of those things that I really enjoy about the game. And the thing we talked about originally with Keyforge was like, you can just buy a deck and play. And that's still true, but I really feel that want to keep getting more decks to play them because each deck is different still. So like it's a different experience every time we play. So I still feel like the cash grab is still there for me. So that's interesting. And we'll keep playing every Friday is the plan, and maybe during the week as well. I bought my buddy the broken token insert for his Keyforge starter set because I can't seem to find one. So I lived through him and I bought him a gift.
Well, there you go.
I did pre-order today the base starter set for the regular set and for the new one coming out.
Gotcha. Special
is
the highest.
That's what it is. Special. And then we played some Gloomhaven last night as well. We died.
That's so sad.
It was terrible. You play for 4 hours just to die. 5 hours. We got our butts handed to us, and it was a mission where we had to defeat every enemy, not necessarily get to a part of the board, and we just couldn't handle it. It was too much. We finished what our main story we could without having to find something else. So we decided to do a side mission that we'll maybe won't do that next time. Maybe we'll level up a little bit before we go back. So that was fun. We had a great time, even though we lost. We're all bummed about it. And then on Saturday night, my wife and I sat down for our Valentine's Day because we didn't get to celebrate during the week because I would work at night. And we played her Valentine's Day gift, which was viticulture. We each got a bottle of wine and sat down to learn how to play a game.
Seems like a good idea. What kind of wine did you have?
Well, she wanted a rosé, so I bought her a rosé.
Mm-hmm.
And then she didn't like it, so we had to switch wines. So I ended up with the rosé, and she ended up with sweet Riesling, which I really enjoyed. My like 3 sips of mine I had. I have to relinquish it. So Viticulture is a worker placement game by Stonemaier Games. It's best to compare it to Stone Age or Lords of Waterdeep if you haven't played it and are familiar with those types of games. I would categorize it as heavier than both of those games, though, which surprised me. And I say that because there are a lot of steps to this game. Reading the rule book, it was very overwhelming compared to the actual gameplay. Like the rule book itself came across very heavy, and like there was a lot of stuff going on, and that we kind of had to figure out. But I also realized like the rule book is kind of laid out weird.
Right.
Well, you're reading phases that don't necessarily apply to like it takes you through seasons of the game you play, spring, summer, fall, winter. And as the rulebook reads, you read it from the seasons and it tells you what to do, but it kind of implements like sometimes a whole page of information that you don't necessarily need at that point.
Right.
So it was a little overwhelming in that aspect of it. But once we got going, I think we picked it up pretty quickly. We did make some mistakes, which happens the first time you play a game and when you're drinking wine. But basically, you are in charge of your own vineyard, and you have on your board, you have a tasting room, you have buildings you build to cultivate grapes and to make wine. And this is all things you're controlling in front of you, but there's also a main board, and that's where you'll be placing workers. When you start the game, I thought this was kind of funny that each player picks a mama and a papa they're called the mamas and the papas, and the mother gives you cards to start the game with, and the father gives you workers, and sometimes they give you special abilities. And the father gives you an oversized worker as well. And these cards you have, green are vines, so different types of wine. Yellow cards are summer cards, which are summer visitors. You have purple cards, which are, we'll call them order cards. Like it's like placing an order for wine, how to make wine. And blue cards are winter visitor cards. So they also do things when they show up. So visitors typically give you things when they come to your vineyard, or give you shortcuts to build things, etc. Basically, they're helping you do things in the game. And what you do is, as you start with your workers, you will be occupying spaces on the board to fulfill whatever that is. So on the summer side, which is where you start, there's yellow ovals on the board in front of different buildings. Those are only summer ones. The winter ones are blue ovals. You play those in the winter. And what you're doing is you're moving people to these ovals, and one might be to plant a vine, to grow Sauvignon Blanc grapes or Merlot grapes. And you would move to your person to that location. And in a 2-player game, you can only occupy one spot. And if that spot is taken, that means the other player can't put their piece there on that turn unless they use their one oversized worker. And they only get to use that once per year. A full turn is a year. And you would grow those grapes. So without going through the whole gameplay, the steps of doing this are you grow grapes, then you pick them off the vines, which you keep. The vines don't go away. And then after you pick your grapes, then you can eventually make wine. And then after you make wine, you then fulfill orders for wine. So essentially, these are the steps that you're doing with a lot of other things you can do during the gameplay to ultimately get victory points by selling wine, having visitors come to on your tours, playing cards. And once someone hits 20 victory points, it starts the last year of the game. You finish out the current year. So someone can essentially catch up or surpass 20. It caps at 25, but you can still add more to that at the end. I really enjoyed it, but I ended up winning on it, and it's because I skipped a whole step not realizing that instead of making the wine and selling it, I just made the wine and thought that that was me fulfilling my card.
Oh, gotcha.
And then at that point, it was too late. Like, so we just kind of like called it, and it was late too. So, I look forward to playing it again because we know the rules now.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a lot easier to play, and maybe I'll have one glass of wine instead of three the next time we play, or maybe no wine, because it's a lot heavier than I expected it to be. So that's good. I enjoyed that aspect of it, but it was surprising. But another great worker placement game. And I think it's a nice next step up because a lot of worker placement games, at least like Stone Age and Lords of Waterdeep, they're pretty similar, minus the theme. So this adds a little bit extra to it. So I like that. Have you played Viticulture?
I have Viticulture. I have read the rules, but I have not played the game yet.
Gotcha.
Because there's multiple editions of Viticulture. Do you have the one that came with like some of the expansions in it?
I have the Essential Edition, so I think that comes with Tuscany or something like that, or one of the expansions. I'm not sure.
Right.
It's confusing because there's a couple of them out there.
Right. Because that is the one that I have as well. And I think it comes with some expansions, but not all expansions or something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah, you can buy. It's funny because I tweeted at Stonemeyer before I bought it, and they were like, "There's only one version of this game you can buy." I'm like, "Okay, that's not technically true."
Well, I think there's only one that they make now.
Yeah, like that's not helping me as a consumer trying to figure out which one I'm trying to buy.
So,
but yeah, that's all my board games. What about you? I see a big giant TBD on here.
Yeah, so I played no board games this week, but that's for a very specific reason that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. And this will be the only week that happened. Well, I know it's happened in the past, but like for the foreseeable future, that will be the only week. But I made a choice in how I was going to spend my time, and I'm going to talk about that choice in a little bit. But that choice resulted in me not playing any board games this week because this other choice took a lot of hours, but it was well worth it. So I'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay. We're not robots. I mean, we can't do all these things. Even every other week, it's tough.
It does. So, but speaking of which, video games, or what have you been playing on your television?
Well, it's been an interesting week, or the last week was interesting. I mean, we've been playing Apex Legends, which I'm still loving it a lot, even though we played with Coach Mo and we did terribly every game.
That did go pretty rough.
That was only I think that was our only like fluky play, though. I think we've been pretty good every other play. So, what can I say about Apex Legends? It's like a great surprise battle royale game that I enjoy. Like, that's awesome. And then I pulled the trigger on 2 games over the past week that I didn't think I was going to, but I did. So I started Far Cry New Dawn.
When you say started, how far into it are you?
Because I started late at night after work, I just wanted to play until I got to a save point. So I just did the opening until you get back to
Hope County.
Hope County, thank you. So I played what was it, like 40 minutes maybe?
Right.
So I played about 40 minutes. I had planned on playing more, but you'll see why I didn't play more. It looks stunning. This shouldn't surprise me because I think I said the same thing about Far Cry 5, that it was stunning when I saw it, but it really did catch me by surprise how gorgeous it looked. And it just felt good again. Like I felt like I didn't miss a step, like riding a bike, if you will. And I was afraid I might have had Far Cry 5, like, jet lag isn't the word, but you know what I mean when I say it.
You played a lot of Far Cry in the last year.
I played a lot of Far Cry, and I thought that maybe I was not going to want to get into this game because of how much I played, but I'm really itching to get back into it. It was fun. It was great. Feels good. And then I downloaded my Anthem because I have EA access. And, this was like I said to myself, well, Kyle and I talk about what games we're going to get, and we're both like on the fence on Anthem. And I said, like, I think like this trial will really tell me if I feel like it's a game I can play solo, because that's my big concern. And I feel like it's a game that I didn't love the demo, demo beta. So we were going to see, and I booted up Anthem, and I did the intro mission, and it was great. And then I did the first mission after the intro mission, and it was great. And then I just kept doing missions, and it was great. And I didn't feel everyone that I was teamed up with was participating, and I didn't need to use voice chat, which is something that I don't want to be forced to do. So unless we're playing with people we know, I don't really like to have voice chat because people are generally evil, bad people online, at least. So I didn't feel like that hindered me by not talking to people. A couple times people dropped out or maybe crashed out because I did have 2 crashes later. But I played so much of Anthem that I think I have 1 hour left on my trial. I think I did 9 hours so far of Anthem. I should have stopped because I bought Anthem after I did that. And I bought the big version of it for us.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
so can you just play it now?
No, it's
okay.
not. That's the Origins edition. That's the PC version one. Like that's like $120, I think.
The thing I don't understand, and this is not a knock on EA Access as a program because I think the service is pretty sweet. I find it odd that they're like, okay, you can play this game early for up to 10 hours, but then if you've bought it, they don't let you keep playing.
Yeah.
That just seems really odd to me, right? Like, clearly you could keep playing. Like, you have purchased the game. It just is so weird that they're like, oh, you haven't bought it, so you can't play anymore, even though you own it. Now you have to wait.
You gotta wait. Yeah. But yeah, I'm having a great time. I unlocked my second javelin, so I hit level 8.
What javelins did you unlock?
So I started with the regular one, the Ranger.
Yep.
The one you start with, and then I unlocked the Interceptor.
Okay.
That's my second one. Because those are the ones I played in the beta.
Mm-hmm.
I did try the Colossus. He's just not for me because he's a little too sluggish.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally see the appeal of. I think every team should have a Colossus because his shield is awesome. He's a beast, and like, it's just not my playstyle, which is fine. And the Interceptor might not be my playstyle either. I only used it a little bit in the demo. It's definitely fast, but it's more like, even though you have guns, it's very melee focused.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of stuff going on in this game where it would be helpful to have it for moments, but
right.
Overall, you don't want to be in the middle of getting attacked all the time, especially when it has low armor.
Right. So have you read any of the reviews in progress? Because they're all in progress right now. Have you read any of the reviews in progress for it?
I haven't looked at any reviews.
Gotcha.
Have you?
I've perused a few of them. And granted, there's a ton more out there than the ones I've looked at. Most of the ones I've looked at, though, are either lukewarm or very cautiously optimistic, but they don't have anywhere near. They say they don't have anywhere near enough information because they don't know what Endgame's going to be like.
Right. It's so early.
So, yeah, I'm just surprised because like everyone I know who has played it is very high on it.
Yeah.
Whereas but most of the reviews I read are very, and I don't know if they're, maybe people were like, oh, and not that people would do this or that professional reviewers would do this, but like people were so high on Destiny and then everyone was like, but there's nothing here. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if there's like we want to make sure we don't put too much out there about how it is, or maybe they really just don't think it's as great as the people who are playing it do. Because like I said, everyone I know who is playing it through, whether that's their 10-hour trial or whatever, has really enjoyed it. So I'm just surprised that the reviews I've read have been so tepid on it. Like I said, that doesn't mean they don't think it's good. They just don't think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. Like, I was going to make a comparison to Destiny, and maybe people are feeling the same way. Maybe reviewers are, but like I would have rated Destiny way higher than it did when it came out, both of them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just because of my enjoyment. When people are reviewing games, obviously story is an important factor for them to consider. And for me, Anthem is very similar to Destiny, where it's not hitting the story beats for me. So I haven't grasped anything to the story. Like, it's not enthralling. It's just kind of, for me, it's something that's there, but it's in the background.
Right.
So when I play, I'm going to talk to people not because I want to hear what they have to say. I'm doing it for progression.
Right.
and like I go talk to someone, it opens up another text chat window where you can interact with the left or right trigger, and then I get like points,
Mhm.
and that levels my. I forget the name of the type of points, but it levels like my guy up a little bit, and then I get other things. So like, if you ask me what the story is right now through the game that I'm playing, I'm a freelancer, and people don't care one way or the other about freelancers. They are fine. They're
Right.
mercenaries. My guy is fine with being a freelancer. He's just doing things for people. He doesn't care as long as he's getting paid. And that's pretty much it. There any other story that they have told, I have not grasped onto.
Is he like are these like Witchers
He's
that
like,
are Iron Mans?
yeah, it's like either a Witcher's or like if Han Solo did things like this
Gotcha.
before how we know him.
Gotcha.
So like I'm just like, if I played the early access and I was if story was important to me, I probably wouldn't have bought this game.
Mhm.
If like I was like, I hope Anthem story is awesome. It might still be like Devin Tyus, he loves Destiny and Destiny 2's Grimoire. Like he loves the story because you had to go out of your way to learn about the story.
Mhm.
It's there. People say there's no story in Destiny. It's there, but it was never important to me. Like I didn't feel like I needed the story to enjoy the game. And I feel like that's what Anthem is.
Is now the appropriate time to get into the whole story versus lore debate?
We
story
could.
versus what is lore?
We could. Yeah, I guess that would be the difference, right? Because like Grimoire's lore and story. Yeah, you're right. There is a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So other than that, I mean, there could be a point where the story does change for me. I mean, the bad guy's pretty cool. I didn't know that there was going to be like a main antagonist, so I think that's cool that there is one. So yeah, I'm enjoying it a lot, and I got to try to play a lot of Far Cry this week before Friday when Anthem is out.
So here's the amazing thing: I've played more Far Cry than you have.
That is.
Yeah, I'm not super far into it, so I'm not going to talk about it. I know, obviously, the game's pretty short because I think Donnie beat it already.
Donnie beat it, yeah.
So apparently, it is pretty short. I am farther than you are, not significantly farther than you are. I've gotten like one companion and then got, doing some other random running around. Well, I should say one additional companion and running around doing some other random things. But they have, a lot of the stuff is really similar to what you did in Far Cry 5. But they have like, oh, if you like, and I misheard what they told me to do. I don't remember. I don't know exactly. But they have like the supply trucks that you can get. And they're like, oh, if you steal the supply trucks, like, you can, if you bring it back. I thought they said like if you bring it back like you did in Far Cry 5, you got like extra points for it, right? So I got this delivery truck because I shot a whirling saw blade of death into the cab and got the driver. And then, speaking of which, though, those saw blades, you gotta be careful because if you have people who are like holding up other people, like they'll bounce and kill civilians, and that's really bad. But anyway. So then I get the truck and I drive up to the compound and like there's no like place for me to bring it. So I was like, well, maybe I did this too early. Like maybe I'm supposed to have someplace else because they said if you unlock like safe houses or bring it back to like where we are is what I thought they had said. So I drove the truck back there, no place for me to pull it in that I can find. So I'm like driving around the compound, but behind it is like this really steep hill. So I have a stolen truck that I have put in the bottom of the lake back there because I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. So I just drove it right to the bottom of the lake. So I'm thinking maybe one day I'll go back to see if it's still there and see if I can get it out because that might just be a fun thing to try to do. But yeah, so that's all of the further I got in Far Cry, and then I quit playing. But the game I do want to talk about very briefly is I have been playing a lot of Apex Legends, which I know we've talked about a couple times, but this is probably going to be like my definitive, like, this is how I feel about this game, unless something drastically changes review of it, because I've been playing it a bit on Xbox, but a lot on PlayStation as well. And oddly enough, my stats on Xbox way better than they are on PlayStation, like not even close. But yeah, so I really like Apex Legends. I don't enjoy as a general battle royales, though I have played Tetris 99 a little bit, and I haven't played it enough to definitively talk about that yet either. I keep finishing in like 7th place in Tetris 99, like over and over. Like I get like top 10, but I can't crack the top 5. So that's about my Tetris skills, apparently. But anyway, I also don't really know how to like target people in Tetris 99 either, because apparently like you can pick like where your lines go and how to, but I have no idea how to do that because the game doesn't tell you. But apparently you can. Anyway, so Apex Legends. I am like on the cusp of this being like my game, of like the game that when it comes to multiplayer games that maybe I'm not playing Overwatch as much. Like this game is like right there for me. But there's one thing that is preventing that from happening. And that is like too often, and this doesn't happen to me in Overwatch very often, and maybe the more I play Apex Legends, like I'll just understand how the systems work better. Too often I get into situations where like I don't win a shootout and I feel like I got hosed. Like I feel like, no, I should have won said shootout. Like I don't understand like the cut, like because obviously like when they have armor and like the colors pop, so you know what like type of armor they're wearing. Like I am finishing games where I'm like, I'll have like, I played a game last night where I did like, we were fighting this other group of 3 and we were in this really tight hallway. And the only way to get out was like through this hallway because of the ring coming in. So we couldn't go back out and around. So my team was like, well, let's just push it. Let's see what happens. I knocked down both of the other people on the other team. And like, I swore I had this other dude just toasted. Like I thought I had it. And they were the only people we fought. And like when it ended, I had done like 360 damage. But I was like, well, how did that dude not die then? Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand how that happened. Like, I don't get it. Like, there was no time for them to recharge or do health or anything. Like, we were in this hallway fighting each other. And I was just like, I don't understand how I didn't knock that third guy and finish off everything. Because my 2 teammates got downed, which they were doing damage too. So I just don't understand. I don't get how it works sometimes. So that I think is the thing that's frustrating is I like looked at it and I was like, why? How? I don't understand how that didn't work. But that's why I really like this game, because it really scratches that like one more time. Like I just want to keep going in and trying to do better. Now, in general, if I can land and have 30 seconds to like get my wits about me and get a gun and things like that, things go great. There have been many times where I've dropped in and I'm like, well, I have a grenade and a barrel stabilizer and a scope, and I have like charge cells for a shield that I don't have. Yeah. And then there's people there and it's like, oh, great. And I feel like that happens way more than it ever really happened to me, like in Fortnite or anything like that. And I think it's just because of how quick you actually, the traversal is in getting from point A to point B. And you're like, oh, that team is dropping way over there, but it's really not that far. And that they can, if they pick up something good, it can be on top of you very, very quickly. So I'm really enjoying my time with it. I have yet to get first place. I don't remember if I talked about it on this podcast or not, but I had a streak of second, third, second. And that was really frustrating because like just couldn't close the deal. No, I think I talked about it in the Discord that I had that string. Last night I played for a little bit and got second 3 times in a row. Just can't seal the deal, but I'm really enjoying my time with it. I think the game feels really good. I think I've gotten to the point where I know what weapons I like. I know where I like to drop. I know kind of how everything works. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of the map. Yeah. I don't really like the map all that much. I feel like, I don't know what it is. Like I like the verticality. I thought there's a lot of verticality in it, but I just don't feel like a lot of the weapons allow for how the design of the map is. Like, because at the end you kind of are like, okay, like wingman shotgun or something else if you're not comfortable with the wingman, but like that's kind of what you want. But like that doesn't really work well in super if it ends in a really vertical area. So yeah, that's kind of just my thoughts on Apex Legends. I really enjoy it. I think it is a smash hit. I think the prices for skins are a little ridiculous.
Crazy.
Like a weapon skin's like $10, right?
$10.
Like that's a lot.
It's insane. For their sale.
Yeah, right. So that's a little bit of a stretch for me, but I get it's free to play and I'm having fun with it. So I will probably, if I continue to play it, I will probably give them some money in some way. But I don't know if I want to. I wish I could give them money in a different way. Just
wait for the battle pass. That's what you need to do.
That's actually maybe that's just what I'll do. Is I'll wait until March when that's coming out and I'll do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay. So now to talk about, and this will transition us into the topic of the show. The reason I did not play board games this week is I had a choice. I could either A, play board games, or B, something that is very near and dear to my heart started this week, and that is the Overwatch League. So the Overwatch League came back, and they played Thursday through Sunday. 8 expansion teams joined the league, so there's now 20 teams total. playing 4 games a day, basically starting at like 6 p.m., running till like midnight on Thursday and Friday, and then on Saturday and Sunday it was like 4 to 10 or something like that. Wow. So really taking a lot of my gaming time, also because my wife is still playing Kingdom Hearts like crazy. So she's really trying to get that platinum trophy. Oh, she's working hard on it. But so that took a lot of my time, and I'm going to give a very brief recap, and I'm going to hope people indulge me in this of week 1 of the Overwatch League. Okay, Josh, I want you to see if you can follow all of this with me, even though it might not make sense for you. Okay. The San Francisco Shock beat the Dallas Fuel. Okay.
Okay.
The LA Gladiators beat the San Francisco Shock.
Okay.
Okay. The Seoul Dynasty beat the LA Gladiators.
Okay.
And the Dallas Fuel beat the Seoul Dynasty. So which of those teams is the best team of that group?
Well, you can't say necessarily. You can just say who beat the last team to beat the last team.
And that is the beauty of the first week of the Overwatch League. Because, like I said, like, man, trying to do the math on like who's the best team now, like everyone is just beating everyone. And granted, there are some teams that are 2-0. There's some teams that only played once this week. Obviously, with the number of matches and the number of teams there, not every team gets to play twice each week. But it was a really exciting first week of matches. I think that, overall, there was a big concern that the meta was going to be very focused around a very specific team comp called GOATs. And GOATs definitely was played the most of any of the team comps, but also was shown to not be the only viable comp. It was really nice to see Dallas get absolutely rolled by the San Francisco Shock. That's not what the nice part was. They got absolutely rolled by the San Francisco Shock in their first game, and then came back and beat, the Seoul Dynasty, who had looked amazing in their first match. And, really just seeing that team who has a lot of lovers and a lot of haters kind of put everything aside and come back and just perform in a lot of ways really amazingly. It was just a really, really good week of games. And if you enjoy esports or the idea of esports, I think what they're doing with the Overwatch League is really special. There are definitely detractors. There are definitely people who, think that watching Overwatch is more fun than playing Overwatch. And right now it might be. The meta is not super engaging if you're not into playing tanks or supports right now. Like if you're a DPS player, it's kind of a lonely place to be because they're not getting a lot of love right now. But if you at all have any interest in seeing people play a video game at like the top tier level of really just being able to understand the complexity and the knowledge and the ins and outs of how a game works, Overwatch League is just really a really cool thing to watch. And the more you watch and the more you understand it, seeing like the plays that they do and how they do things and like the setups that they have and the things that like just are kind of mind blowing that they put this much work and there's this much nuance. It's not just a whole bunch of people running and shooting at each other. Like the ways that they put the strategies that they have, the plays that they put together, almost like, in football that they'll say a word because these people are from all over the world playing on a team. They'll just say one word. And that's like basically calling a play. Like that is what they're going to do on this attack or this defense. And this is how they're going to handle it. And that's how they're going to try to execute it. And it's really, really cool. They have a thing. They have like their command center. If you buy an all access pass for $15, which I did, they have a command center. And the cool thing about the command center is you can, instead of watching just the main stream, you can actually watch the stream from every individual player's point of view.
Oh.
So you can choose, like, if you are like a support player, like you can pick like, oh, I really like X support player and just watch their stream for the entire game to see exactly what they're doing, which is, I think, really cool. And it's awesome that, and I think the thing that made me really appreciate this is there's one particular play that was happening where I was watching, because I tend to play support. I was watching the support Lucio player, and the other team had moved up onto this high platform. And then the commentators were like, "Oh, there's some miscommunication. This player fell down, and now they're swarming him." But the Lucio player actually booped him off of the high ground, so that his team could swarm him and take him out.
Oh, nice.
But the announcers were like, "Oh yeah, there was obviously miscommunications because he went before everyone was ready." And I was like, "No, Jexay booped him. That was awesome. That was so good." Like, and it just is really cool that you get like these perspectives of the game that you wouldn't normally get, but just by watching the mainstream. So anyway, that's my rant about Overwatch League. It was a really, really good first week. I hope that even with playing what is by many considered to be a stale meta, If they can keep playing like they are, I think it could still be a really good first few weeks until a new patch comes through and we get an updated meta. So Overwatch League, highly recommended.
Nice.
All right. So, but with that, I promise I'll play board games this week. It'll be great. I'll just have Overwatch League on in the background while I'm playing board games. So speaking of Overwatch League, moving on to our topic of this topic of the show, season 2 did kick off back on February 14th, and while the battle royale genre is definitely more popular right now, there's no doubt Blizzard has done a pretty remarkable job with the Overwatch League itself. Granted, like I said, the current meta isn't going to be the most exciting for a lot of people, but the matches that just happened this last week were really fun, really competitive, and a good representation of high-level Overwatch. And while esports have been pretty popular, competitive tabletop gaming doesn't have quite the same following. Sure, Magic and other CCGs will get like decent viewing on Twitch, along with like classic games like Chess and Go, but as a whole, there's not a lot of eyes or participation right now for high-level board game tournaments. So Josh and I are going to attempt to change all of that tonight.
Yeah.
And we are going to discuss how to potentially create a competitive tabletop league and share all of those amazing details with you. So Josh, when you read the show notes and we're like, we're going to talk about trying to create a competitive tabletop league.
Yeah.
What were the first things that went through your mind? Was it like, wow, why is Kyle doing this?
It was like, maybe not. It was like, wow, that was first. And then I was like, how? And no. I agree with everything you said. And like when you go to conventions, they certainly do have, like board game tournaments, but
Absolutely.
It's very specific games. And I think what you lose is, I'm trying to think of the right word for it. You're not getting new people into your tournaments because people don't want to go into a tournament and play a game that they're going to play expert at or
Right.
professional. Like you can't just walk into this tournament and just try to have fun. And that's another problem with tournaments. They're not always fun. And I think that's an important part to having tournaments.
Have you ever played in any gaming tournament?
No, because I have no desire to put any of that pressure. That removes why I enjoy games.
Oh, okay.
Like my buddy has been going to Keyforge tournaments the past 2 weekends because they just started in our area. And it's great. He loves it because he's a very competitive player.
Right.
But my play style doesn't. I'm happy to play a game. I don't need to win. I have fun usually regardless of if I win or lose. I mean, it obviously depends on the game. But yeah, I mean, it never just. It doesn't appeal to me in that aspect. The same reason why maybe I'm not into video game tournaments either.
Okay.
But I mean, you've played Magic tournaments, right?
I have. I played back in the day. I played a lot of Magic tournaments.
And so that I'm assuming that appeals to you on that aspect of. I think you kind of like alluded to it. I mean, we talk about it, but like when you were saying your big problem with Apex is like you feel like you're doing sufficient enough to be winning, and you're not.
And I don't even necessarily know that I feel like I'm doing sufficient to be winning and I'm not. It's if I feel like I should be, but I don't know why I'm not. Like there's not that feedback of like, had X happened, you could have done Y and then you'd be good. Or because you didn't do Y, you lost this thing. Like that's the feedback I'm looking for, which in Magic, typically when you would go back in a Magic tournament or when you play a hand and it would not work out the way you did, or you play a sequence of plays, you're like, oh crap. Had I done X, Y, Z, or now that I have the information from that other player, seeing how they react, I probably should have done this other thing. You don't get that necessarily in Apex right now. I think that will come. Like, I think that the longer that this game stays popular, just like the longer Fortnite stayed popular, like you will get the really, and you're already starting to see it. Like there's maps out there that show you like where the highest like good drops are and like where the best place to drop in is, and like kind of like those things are starting to come out, and I think that will come. But for me right now, it's like, okay, this didn't work out. I don't feel like it was a mechanical issue as far as my aim went. So what was it that they did that I am not sure of that resulted in me not winning that fight.
So I think that's what I mean. Like for me, like when I play Apex, I just like I'm not saying that you don't like the experience, but like when we don't win or when I don't win or get first place, like obviously I would love to get first place, but I'm just kind of like, hey, fourth place, that's awesome. Like I feel great, but I think that's a difference maybe between how I view tournaments in board gaming and cards and kind of how like you do, because there was something else you said a while back where like you like to, there was a board game and I can't think if it was a card game, but you like to figure out how to like, I don't want to say perfect, but how to like be the most proficient in what you're doing.
Oh, I min-max I try to figure out like, I try to min-max games when I play them for sure.
Yeah. And you were telling me you were playing the game with your wife and you could get it. So you always get the maximum points. And
yep.
So like, I feel like that's the difference between what my tournament would look like and maybe what yours would look like. I don't really know what you'd be looking for in creating a tournament.
Well, I think that's the big thing though, right? Is when it comes to board games, and specifically the reason I like card games is anytime there's like an engine building aspect or when you're trying to create synergy in something, I like to explore all of the areas that those things can happen in. Like, what are all the different types of synergies that exist? What are all the different engines you can build? And then, do I want to know what the best one is? Sure. I definitely want to know what the best one is. But for me, while I really like to win, I really like doing cool stuff more.
Okay.
So if I can figure out a way to do something cool, great. But if I can't figure out a way to do something cool, then I'm going to try to win, right? So that's where, like, when I played Magic, I didn't do these decks very often because people didn't like playing against them, and I didn't want to make somebody else's day not fun. But I enjoyed exploring the unusual ways of winning, right? Like, could you deck someone so they weren't able to draw, so they'd lose the game? Like, nobody likes playing against mill decks. They're not fun to play against. So, like, yes, I thought that was a cool thing, but I also knew that might wreck other people's experiences in the tournament. And I think that's one thing video games do well, in the sense of, well, there are going to be guns that are better or strategies that are better or, metas that are better, but you can change those, right? You can tweak how a gun fires. You can tweak how well armor absorbs damage. Like, you can tweak those things that if there's something that's unfun going around, you can fix that pretty quickly. Magic, yes, they have banned cards, they have restricted cards, they have all of those things. But in general, in board games, like, rules erratas don't happen all that much. And when they do, it's usually because something is like completely broken, not because something maybe is just a little unfun. So that's, for me, I think the bigger issue when it comes to like creating competitive quote unquote board games or a competitive board game idea is like, how much of it is like min-maxing the game and trying to figure out the best strategy? How much of it, though, especially with there's games with a lot of interaction, how much is it though like reducing the fun of the other players, right? Because that's like what Mildex did. It was like, oh, this is fun. This isn't fun at all. Like, I'm not doing anything. You're just taking all my cards away and woohoo, this is great. Or like the ridiculous combo decks that would exist in Magic, like the other person's playing solitaire. Like, you're not doing anything. They're just like out there playing like 30 cards, and you're like, oh, that was fun. I'm glad I got to do something.
Yeah.
So I think that is what you run into with board games is, how do you create something where in video games, if, person A has X things and person B has X things, then it comes down to who's better, person A or person B. In board games, very rarely do person A and person B have X things. Person A probably has X and person B has Y, but is X better than Y? And if so, isn't that person just at an advantage? So, yeah, but I think about like competitive board games, and I think of things that I've seen on my television. Like, have you ever played the yard game Cube?
No.
Okay, so there's a yard game called Cube. Okay, it's actually really fun. I really like playing Cube. It's a good time. It's KUUB. It's like this. Is based off like this ancient, like, I think potentially like Viking game where they would like throw like bones at skulls and stuff. Like, that's what they say the lore of it is. But anyway, like on one of the local sports channels, like the Cube National Championships were on television. So like I was watching Cube and my wife's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm watching Cube. Like, this is awesome. But I figure like if Cube can be on television, why there's got to be space for board games to be on television, like competitive board games to be on television, right?
Yes, and you're kind of nailing the point I was going to make with this being something. It can't just be a tournament. We're trying to get it to be a league,
Right.
which means you ultimately want people to watch this. And everything you said, 100%, I agree with, which is why it would have to be dexterity games. It would 100% have to be Flip Ships, Maple Circus, Beasts of Balance. It would Clask. It would have to be a dexterity game where it's more than just board game skill. It's physical skill to some aspect. So now Kyle's better at flipping ships than me. He's going to be like drafted before me or picked first, if you will. Like, it has to be something that people can relate to, not knowing board games. Like, if I'm my dad and I'm watching TV and I scroll by someone playing Magic on TV, I'm going to keep flipping the channel. But if for some reason I flip by a channel and someone's stacking a cow on an elephant, I might be like, what is happening? And I might stop for a second and then I might watch what's happening. Or like if they're doing the Catch the Moon game, I can see it, but I can't see the name, where you're stacking the ladders on top of each other, or Tokyo Highway, where you're doing these things that are genuinely exciting to watch or participate in. I think it would have to be something like that. And I think the problem with board gamers is they would say that that's not a board game.
Gotcha.
the elite board gamers be like, I'm not going to watch Board Game League because they just play dexterity games.
So, and I realized once I said it, Cube is Kubb, not Kuub. So anyway, but usually everyone should check out Cube because it is actually a really fun yard game. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it a lot. It's a good time. But so here's my idea. And I'm going to tell you the first idea I had when it came to brainstorming, like what could potentially be a competitive tabletop league that might be in a situation where people would be able to relate, that most people would know the game, they'd understand the general aspects of what the game are. You'd have to like put some parameters on some parts of the game because there's some negotiations, some other things that can happen there. So you have to like put some restrictions maybe on some time limits on some things. But I think having professional Monopoly run like, because then at first stick with me here. I saw the look. Stick with me here. But it's run like the World Series of Poker. So at the end of each day, whoever wins each table takes all of the money that they got and they move on to the next table. So you have a whole bunch of tables that start, and then as you whittle through, you're combining tables and you're combining tables and you're combining tables down to who has the most money at the end. And every time they combine tables, you just start with the money you have, but you lose all your property, you lose everything else, but you start with your money.
Interesting.
So, and that's then you start rolling, moving. You can make trades, you can make deals, you can do things like that. But that's kind of the process you go through. And then eventually you get to this final table of Monopoly, and where you have like the really fancy board with, some official who's there, who's officially moving the pieces for everyone. I think that might be a way, if we were going to get like, if the World Series of Poker can be on ESPN,
yes,
I feel like the World Series of Monopoly might have a chance as well.
It's not a terrible idea. It's not a terrible idea. The problem, I'm not going to pick it apart because
pick it apart. I want you to pick it apart.
That wouldn't be good. But I think the biggest hurdle you would face is everyone would have to relearn how to play Monopoly by the rules.
Yeah.
Because nobody plays Monopoly by the rules in the rule book.
That's true.
Everyone has their own house rules.
Well, but I think, that just like in other games, or at least in like Magic, like there are like the rules enforcement level of how strict they are with the rules changes depending on the event you're participating in for Magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it'd be a similar thing that if like you get to the point where you're like, I'm playing in like the World Series of Monopoly, you are going to be held to the strict standard of the rules that exist. You know, so that doesn't mean you have to like. I think I think there's going to be a very select group of people who are really into this. Probably like the same group of people who competitively play Scrabble. You know,
Yeah.
not that it would be an overlap, but just similar how it would be a very distinct community. But I think it might be a cool thing of like trying to build like the ultimate Monopoly tournament and seeing, you know, have people do X amount of dollar buy-in, just like they do with the World Series of Poker. Probably don't do like $10,000 like theirs is. I think like maybe do like $100.
Yeah.
And just say like, hey, do you want to play a weekend of Monopoly or maybe a couple hours of Monopoly for $100? And we'll see how it goes.
I think it's funny. It's interesting. I think it's a great idea, but it's funny that you picked like the most hated board game among all board game players.
Right. But I was trying to think of something that the general public, like everyone knows what Monopoly is.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
In general.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think it's a great idea, actually. Smart, and maybe we'll get these kids to stop playing this like debit card Monopoly games that keep coming out. Put them back to paper money.
I think that'd be important. So did you have, like, I know you said when you saw this topic, you're like, I don't think this is going to work. Did you have anything that you came up with that you thought might be a good type of competitive game or competitive league?
For the league, the first thing I thought of was it would have to be like tiered as far as like styles of games. So like you'd have like a all-encompassing league, but there'd be like league play where, like I said, it'd be like dexterity games, like grouped out into different categories. But for games, like the first thing I thought of was Smash Up or Guardians, like a style of game where you can play 1v1 instead of the option for teams or for like one-on-one kind of style. But like I questioned the watchability of that, which unless you have the people talking through what they're doing and why, I don't know that you're going to want commentators like you do have for like Overwatch League, like calling play-by-play on like a board game.
I mean, you do for Magic.
Yeah, and it's not, I mean, in my opinion, it's not awesome.
I mean, I think both.
You have to have a lot of knowledge so when you watch Magic.
Yes, it's hard. It is very tough to grok if you don't already know how to play.
You need to know what they're saying, and it's not for even for me, someone who has played Magic, I still don't understand half of what they're talking about, which is just because playing Magic is like staying up to date with technology, like computer technology.
Right.
The second you stop, you're lost. It evolves every 3 months. It keeps changing. So the terminology itself is just overwhelming. But I still think like you could find something in the dexterity thing, and you could even include yard games in that as well, because they're still technically dexterity games.
Right.
Just no theme necessarily.
Cube has a theme.
Yeah, it does that. Well, it could be a history lesson also. But yeah, I didn't get to like as in depth as like, I think your example for the Monopoly thing was great. I couldn't picture the bigger picture when I was thinking of it. Like I didn't see the production of it. I just figured you would need to have this type of game to be played. Like I'm like, what will my grandparents like to watch?
Right.
Like,
so here's my idea. If you did a Smash Up League, because I think Smash Up has some cool options. Because when I think of Smash Up, I think a lot of like putting it in the context of like a MOBA, where like before the game starts. So like Magic has team events, right? Where it's 3 versus 3, and like each one is playing like. One of them is playing standard, one of them is playing like extended, and the other one's playing like legacy, or so they're each playing a different format, right? Rather than doing that, you do 3 versus 3, but then at the beginning of the game, at the beginning of the round, you have a ban and like save phase where like you can ban, like it's every different faction in Smash Up's available, and then you get to be like, oh, we're going to ban this faction, and the other team's like, okay, well, we're gonna save. Well, actually, you usually do your saves first, but you're gonna save X and save Y, and then we're gonna ban this one, and this one. So like you're trying to figure out like, okay, what if we know the other players and like maybe what they're good at or what their tendencies are or what they like to play in Smash Up, then we like ban the factions that they're best at or that they're most well known for. Even though they might be able to save one of them, they won't be able to save both of them to make like their combo or whatever it is. And I think something like that is for a game like Smash Up would be pretty sweet in adding a little something extra to what the game is, right?
Yeah, that would be cool.
So that's my thoughts for that. Okay, I had one other game that I thought about that I was like, it would be really fun to do this. And I don't actually know that it would be really fun, but I could imagine that it might be really fun. So I was thinking, again, trying to think of games that most people have played, at least in the US, or are generally aware of. I would like to see a competitive Sorry tournament, but here's the twist on it, right? So similar to the World Series of Poker, this idea with Monopoly. Wow, I blanked for a second there. With Monopoly, I feel like you could go one of two ways with Sorry. Number one, you could do it where that like when you knock a player out, like you keep their piece, and then like when you start the next round, like you have like your 4 pieces plus however many you knocked out. So that you could be like rocking like 12-piece Sorry, right?
Yeah.
That'd be pretty sweet. The other option obviously would just be it's a regular tournament where you just like if you win, you move on and everyone starts the same. But I think keeping pieces would be really awesome. So then you could just be like, oh, yeah, I'm just gonna like start people and move 4 back and start people and move 4 back again. It's like that'd be so awesome. There'd obviously be some rules things that we need to figure out, but I think that'd be really cool. So you have like 9 pieces running around the board. I think that'd be a good time. 4 plus. So yeah, Sorry, where you get to keep pieces after you do it and you move on to new boards. That's one thing. But I also think another potential option is when you look at people who do like tabletop RPGs that like have shows and things like that. Like granted, that's an RPG. It's done for story. It's done in the way to, entertain rather than to be competitive. But if you took something along those same lines and then you applied it to like Pathfinder, the adventure card game, right, and the focus being though on people being efficient, like who is able to be the most efficient on their way through, X, Y, or Z like mission
MVP of the team.
Yeah, like who's most efficient as you're moving through. And like if you have multiple teams competing, like how many cards did they go through, how many moves did it take, how many different locations did they have to go to, and figuring out some sort of awesome algorithm I'm sure exists about like, okay, which team was the most efficient, knowing that like, oh, since there's some deck shuffling and some placement things that are going to be different in that game, like the guy you're looking for might be on the bottom of one team's deck and on the second card from the top on the other team's. Like, how do you compensate and give some sort of, fairness into like, oh, you had X number of more cards to go through. Henceforth, you get like certain amount of points back, if you would, in order to kind of balance things out, to have some sort of system to keep it as equitable as possible. So I think doing something like that might be kind of cool too, because not only would you have a storytelling aspect that people could get into, but then you also have we want to tell the story, we want to get people invested into the characters and the players, but then you also still have a competitive aspect of like, yes, we're taking this seriously, not only because we care about the game, but because we want to do the best we can because we want to win too.
You could do like a pyramid structure too, so the most value, like you have like 10 games going, and then after the 10 are over, you take the top 10 people from each team and put them into parties. And then the top MVPs of that, you vote on an MVP from that group until you get to the winner of all of them.
Look at this. We're setting the board game world and RPG world on fire with these ideas. Man, I think we got this down. I think we should start the Board with Video Games competitive board game network.
Yeah.
Set up tournaments all across the country. And I think it's important to note that obviously like game manufacturers and publishers do and support competitive games and, like especially like Fantasy Flight with like Star Wars and things like that. Like there are a lot of tournaments that exist out there, and there are some games that probably maybe are not super meant for tournament, but I think having like a competitive pitch car like league or circuit would be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So anyway, hey, that is our topic of the show this week. Competitive board games. Do you think we should do more of them? Did you like any of the ideas? Well, that I talked about a lot. Let us know. Talk to us on the social media and because we would love to talk about any ideas you have for competitive board gaming. Josh.
That's me.
We have some sad news, don't we?
Well, I mean, it depends on how you look at it.
Well, how do you look at it?
The show's like 5 minutes shorter.
That's true. The show will be a few minutes shorter. So unfortunately, maybe not unfortunately, because we're recording on Monday, we didn't do our usual social media outbursts as we usually do for questions and things like that this week. So we have no questions from listeners this week, but that's okay. Just remember, you can always hit us up at Twitter at BoardWithVG and let us know things you want us to talk about.
Yeah.
So with that, we will seamlessly move into a well-rounded life. While we are clearly a gaming podcast, we want to give you one recommendation, suggestion, thing we are talking about, a thing we are into, talking about with friends, covering right now that's helping us live a well-rounded life. So, Josh, what is your recommendation, sir? What are you into right now?
Well, first I'll say I took Paul's advice from last week, and I went out and I bought myself, I almost said an adult toy, so I just did say it, but I bought myself a toy as an adult. And I got myself a Donatello original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles figure from GameStop, because all the other ones in stores are like the new weird cartoon looking ones.
Oh, yeah.
But I legitimately took Paul's advice and I was out with the family. I looked for toys by myself in Target, in Walmart, in Barnes and Noble, in my local game store. I'm just like, I never do this, but I'm just perusing toys right now. Nothing really like caught my attention. And then I was in GameStop and I stumbled across the Cloud amiibo, which I really wanted to get. I don't have a lot of amiibos. I have 4 now, including that Cloud. So I had to get that. And then I saw those Ninja Turtles sitting up behind the counter. And I'm like, give me one of those, please.
And one of those.
So I took Paul's advice, and that's what I did. So he's standing right in between my monitors. It's a cool figure, very well done. And now I have that.
Awesome.
I don't have all those Transformers that Paul has. And my advice, which I may have given previously, but I don't remember if I did, is read a book, right? Why not? Read a book. I'll give you some recommendations.
I was going to just ask, do you have a book you'd recommend?
Well, I just got I kickstarted a board game book, which I'm excited to read. I have not read that yet, but it's on my nightstand.
Oh, I have that book too.
I've been trying to find these books. It's the Chaos Walking trilogy. I haven't been able to find them in hardcover because I prefer hardcover for collectible reasons. And I ended up ordering them on eBay because I just, for whatever reason, didn't think to look. They're library versions of the books, so I got them for like $3 each, which I'm happy for that. And it's by Patrick Ness. He's the author. The first book is called The Knife of Never Letting Go. And then there's The Ask and the Answer is the second book, and Monsters of Men is the third book. They are making this into a movie series, which is another reason why I wanted to get these now, so I don't have to buy the books with the picture of the movie on the cover. The movie's going to have Tom Holland, a.k.a. Spider-Man, and Daisy Ridley, a.k.a. Ray, in the movie. I'm very excited for it. But I read or listened to them on Audible as a recommendation from a friend, and I loved it. So I would say check that out. And speaking of Star Wars, I would recommend a J.J. Abrams book called Ship of the Theseus or Theseus. I'm probably saying it wrong. And that book is an adventure, because when you read the book, it is full of things, clues, paperwork, postcards, notes in the book, as well as the book is written as if you're reading a book that someone else took and then wrote notes in, and then someone else read the book after that person and also wrote notes in it. So the notes are in different colors. So like, I think like the first person to read it wrote it in blue, and then the second person wrote it in red. And then there's some parts where they like found each other when after they checked it out, and you're unraveling this like mystery while you're reading the book. So it's definitely a heavier thing to get into, but there's 4 books that I recommend you check out.
Awesome. Very, very cool. So read some books. Books are good. I have that board game book as well that I probably should get to reading, and I have not opened it up yet, but I do want to read it. So that's up there. My recommendation this week, one thing I'm going to recommend as a side thing. Number one, if you are not on our Discord, which is over on PSVG, I recommend that you do it. We had what I thought was a wonderful discussion in there today, specifically about the movie Bohemian Rhapsody. And, we talk about games a lot, but we get into some really, I think, very interesting, deep, thoughtful discussions about just things that are gaming related, things that are not gaming related, things that are heavy, things that are not heavy. Like, it's just a really cool place to hang out. And I thought our discussion today on Bohemian Rhapsody, I thought was pretty great. But I'm going to recommend a different movie. It is, imagine that, a documentary, because I do like those a lot. And that is Won't You Be My Neighbor? It is a documentary. I watched it on HBO. You might be able to get it elsewhere, but it is a documentary about Mr. Rogers. And in a world right now where, things are sometimes a little rough and maybe not going the way we want them to all the time, hearing Mr. Rogers' take on things and him talking about things and just the way he approached life, the way he approached kids is something that I think we forget about. We have a whole generation of folks who grew up on Mr. Rogers, and actually really a couple generations of people who grew up on Mr. Rogers. And there definitely was, especially like in the late 90s and early thousands, some pushback on his message of like, you are special, like just be you being you, and that's where a lot of people got the idea that like, oh, the quote unquote millennials, they just think they're, Mr. Rogers ruined them by telling them they're all special, yada, yada, yada. And I think one thing that's really profound that you learn by watching this documentary is just hearing him. He did a lot of graduation speeches before he passed away and all those things. But just hearing him talk about like what he means by that is that you don't need to be profound to be worthy of love. And I think that's just like the biggest thing of like what he was trying to get across was that you don't need to be an astronaut or whoever high profile to be worthy of the love of others. And that's really what he means by like, you are special. And I think just really like listening to all of that, hearing him talk about, the folks who are around him talk about like when 9/11 happened, his reaction to that, when they had him come back and do more specials, the cast and the crew that he worked with, why he did things the way he did, why he never showed up in the land of make believe, like all of these things that are just very interesting. They also address a lot of the rumors about like him being in the Marines and him having like a whole bunch of tattoos, and that's why he wore the sweaters and stuff. But it's just a really well done documentary with some really interesting insight into who he was as a man and why he did the things he did, and that he, for all intents and purposes, seems like he was just a really genuinely good person. And, sometimes in a world that can sometimes be hard to see, look on the bright side, it is sometimes nice to go and just, listen to and hear stories about someone who, from all accounts, was just a really great person. So
nice.
That's what I would recommend. Like I said, Won't You Be My Neighbor, the documentary about Mr. Rogers. Josh, what do you say we wrap up this show?
Sounds like a great idea. Thanks for joining us, everyone, as usual. In addition to finding us on Twitter and Instagram at BoardWithVG, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/BoardWithVG. So feel free to give us a 5-star rating over there. Also, if you want to communicate in more long form, or you're not feeling social media, feel free to email us at boardwithvg@gmail.com. We tag our stuff with the hashtag boardwithvg. So you should as well. Whatever you're up to, just let us know. We like seeing what's going on. And even if it's not board game related, we know that you guys are active community members. So we enjoy seeing that. Remember, whatever podcast service you're listening to us on, we encourage you to give us a stellar rating. That is whether you're downloading us from the PSVG feed, the Dice Tower Network feed, or our own standalone Board with Video Games feed. You can find me on Xbox or PlayStation at Why So Serious. That's SIRRIUS. And that Switch code, it's still there. Maybe because if I start playing Tetris 99, maybe I'll share it I only downloaded it. I haven't played it yet.
Yeah, I don't know that you can add people.
You can't play with your friends?
Maybe. I don't know. I never tried. I have very few friends on Switch because I never know what my Switch code is either.
All right, Kyle. Well, speaking of that, where can people find you?
So you can find me in all the usual places: Twitter, Instagram, PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, Board Game Geek, all at Psychocross, CYCOCROSS. As always, if you have suggestions for future topics, be sure to reach out to us on the social media because we want to talk about what you want to hear about. And remember, everyone, whether it be board games or video games, never stop gaming.